or floor you want to go to. But in my case, my office was about 5 minutes away from the World Trade Center. So I left out of the World Trade Center, heading to my office. And within a minute or two of walking away from the World Trade Center, so let's say the World Trade Center is like the tree. I'm walking away from the World Trade Center, heading to my office, which was that way. So all of a sudden, I see people that's walking towards the World Trade Center looking up. And I turned around to see what they were looking at. And you could see at the top of one of the World Trade Centers, you could see fire. But well, no, I'm sorry. No. I didn't see the fire yet. What we seen was stuff falling from the sky, coming down from the building. And I thought it was just confetti, to be honest with you. To this day, I thought it was confetti, and because we're over there in the district, financial district. So I just thought they were celebrating something, And so I'm seeing a little confetti coming down. Then you start seeing a little more stuff falling down. And one thing I never forget is one of the things that fell in front of me was a Bell telephone. And that stuck to my mind because I work for the phone company. And then you start seeing fire. You didn't see fire right away. Then you start seeing fire. But you just took it as, something's going on in one of those buildings. You never thought that there was a plane crash or a terrorist act going on at the time. But the stuff was coming down so kind of heavy, so I had to go underneath a store and just kind of stay there from the stuff falling down on you. And it slowed down a little bit. And, no one still at that time knew what was going on. There was a little bodega that had the actual picture of the plane. They thought it was a small plane inside the building. So you can see it on a little TV from the bodega. All right. But so, you're still moving on like your day's going on. So I head to my building, like I said, 4 or 5 minutes away from there. I go upstairs to my building. I'm waiting for someone to let me in. So I'm in the, when you get out of the elevator, you're in a hallway. But in order to get into the building, that part of the building, someone got buzzed me in. But I was early. And so I waited in the hallway. And I'm looking out the window. And as God is my witness, I heard a sound and I seen a shadow that I'll never forget. I seen a plane in the shadow from the tall buildings go past. Boom! And you heard a noise. And trust me, I'm getting ready to tell you the noise. I'll never forget it. It's like whoever was driving that plane, whatever, was stepping on the gas pedal. Or whatever, how they do it in the plane. I don't know if it's gas pedal or whatever. But that's what you heard. And then next thing you just hear explosion. Then we hear intercom come over. Leave the building immediately. Do not take the elevator. Leave the building immediately. But I was up on the, I think about the 14th, 15th floor. And like a fool, you know what I did? Took the elevator. But it worked out because I was able to get out. As I left the elevator to head out to the street, one of my coworkers, Tanya Taylor, was coming in the building to see if I was there already, because I'm an early person. So she was already out in the rubbles, but she was coming to see about me. And we had revolving doors. Guys, everything I'm telling y'all, trust me, it's not made up. This is the truth. As I'm going through the revolving door, Tanya Taylor was coming in the door. Another 15 seconds or so, we probably would miss each other. But it was a blessing that we seen each other, because I'm going to tell you why. So we all out in the streets. World Trade Center is right there in front of us. You can see it. And you don't know what to do. I mean, we all, because don't forget, stuff really hasn't started coming down yet. The building hasn't started falling yet. So we all didn't know what to do. We just out there what the hell is going on? Everybody everybody got their ideas. Everybody's talking about what's going on, but no one really knew what was going on. Then about 15, 20 minutes later, you thought another plane was coming because of the noise. but it wasn't a plane. It was the building. The first tower started to fall, and you look up, and you can see people. I promised myself I was going to try to be strong. And I told y'all this. I haven't told this story in years, but you see people hanging from the window, waving flags or white things or whatever they could just to let people know they was there. And underneath you seen fire. On top of them you seen fire. And you just felt for them. But there's nothing you really can do. And then you start seeing people actually jumping from the windows. We never see them actually hit the bottom because of the way the other buildings were, but you could see them jumping from the window. And I guess people thought, well, I'm going to jump and take my chance, or at least my family members be able to identify my body instead of me be buried in this building. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's my thoughts. Then, like I said, the building just started tumbling. And by the time you could turn around to run, I'm sure y'all saw highlights on commercials or TV shows or news about the people that were running and all that stuff all over them. I was one of them, me and Tanya. And by the time you turned around, that stuff was already over you. You didn't know what to do. You didn't know which way. Everybody's running every way, running this way, that way, this way. And you run as much as you can. I took Tanya's laptop and I held her laptop and my laptop. We had the bookcase. And she led the way. Because Tanya was right in front of me. And you couldn't see her. I'm telling you, right in front of me. The way we communicated was Tanya, Lenny, Tanya, Lenny. That's how we communicated. And you just kept going. You know where to go. You really didn't know where to go. But you had to leave from that area. So we ran and walked as far as we could. Then it kind of like cleared down a little bit, slowed down. Then you see all the cops coming. All the cops are coming in now. As we go on the opposite way, the cops and first responders are going in towards it. And I remember a lady, overweight, couldn't go no more. So I told Tanya, "Hey, take the bags." And me and a few other guys grabbed the lady. And we tried to walk with her as much as we could, just to get her back on her feet to say, "You can't stay here." Then we got on the highway. They walked us or guided us. Guided us towards the highway, and was telling us to go towards Brooklyn. And we all walking as much as we can. Like I said, it's cleared up now. Because all the derby, the stuff that came out, the gook that you seen, it was still in the air, but it was clearing up where you could see now. So we going on to the, what was that driveway from? Was it Harlem River Drive or Brooklyn? I forgot. That leads into Brooklyn. But there's no cars. There were no cars on there. So we all walking, but only cars were coming and were cop cars and detectives and ambulance and fire trucks. They was on the opposite side. And we heading towards New York. I'm sorry, towards Brooklyn. And we walking. But you got to walk. Got to walk. I'm 61 now. I don't think I would be able to make that walk 19 years ago without stopping. But you had to keep going. And then as we go up the ramp, you go up a ramp, and then you got to come back up the ramp. You're walking, and you're walking up the ramp, but you're walking towards the World Trade Center building. You can see it all in front of you as you're going up the ramp, to go around the ramp, to go to Brooklyn. But you got to go this way and that. So you see, as you go up the ramp, you start seeing the World Trade Center again. And guess what happened then? The second building start to fall. So you're running up the ramp towards it, really, but just to get around to go the opposite way. But you had to run up it. And by the time you got up to the top of it, same thing, all over you. Can't see nothing. I mean, this was even worse now because it's double, and just everything. And you can see, you just see the people. I'll never forget just seeing the people in these windows. But you had to keep moving. So we kept moving. Get over into Brooklyn. And as soon as we get to Brooklyn, I'll never forget a cop was right there, a police officer. And he gave us water to just wipe our face off. But you couldn't stop. Had to keep going. Had to keep going. And we finally got to a restaurant. We was able to go in there, go to the bathroom, wipe your face off. Back then, we didn't have cell phones and social media like you guys have now. We had pagers back then, so I couldn't get in touch with anybody. Matter of fact, my family didn't even know I was going to New York that day. You know, because I got early in the morning and just left. But you couldn't get in touch with nobody on the phone. Eventually, I got in touch with my oldest son, Ella Teef, and said, "Hey, I'm over here in New York. I'm okay now. I'm in Brooklyn. Just let everybody know that I'm okay." So he called back to my house and my wife and let them all know that I was okay because I couldn't get in touch with none of them. So I couldn't get in touch with none of them. Tanya was able to get in touch with her friend as we got deeper into New York. He picked us up in his car. We went back to their place because she lived in Brooklyn. And I stayed there because you couldn't come back into New Jersey. Finally, about 8, 9, 10 o'clock that night, they opened up the bridges where you can go into New Jersey, but not into New York. So 10, 11 o'clock at night, I believe, 11, 12, I don't remember the time. I got it written down, but I was able to start heading home. He gave me a ride to Gophler's Bridge, as far as he can go. I had a friend of mine named Chris Cook come to Gophler's Bridge and pick me up on New Jersey side and brought me home. I think I got home about 2 o'clock that morning. To this day, I still have all the clothes I wore and the shoes I wore in a bag in my basement. And I still have it there. It's a day that you never forget. A terrible day. Probably one of the worst days, if not the worst day in American history. I mean, we have a lot of them, but that definitely is right up there. So that's my story. You know, and I'm going to tell you, to this day, 19 years later, I don't think about the World Trade Center every day. Of course, on the day of when they celebrate it or honor it, I should say, me and Tanya, we text each other every morning like we did this morning on that day, and we reminisce. It's something that stays with you. Something that you'll never, ever be able to just forget. You try to push it aside or you try to compress it, but you'll never forget it. I'll never forget the sound of that plane. I'll never forget the look of the stuff just falling. I'll never forget seeing the people in the windows pleading for help. I'm sure you couldn't hear them. You know, we couldn't hear them, but I'm sure they're pleading for help. And the thing I'll never forget is just seeing people fall. Knowing that when they left that window, their life was over. Can you imagine that? You made a decision to jump from the World Trade Center, one of the tallest buildings in the world. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that being in your mind? I could see why a lot of people lost their mind over this. Lucky enough for me, I was able to stay strong and talk to people about it, especially when it first happened. AT&T made sure that we got counseling, so I was able to continue to talk about it. And but like I said, I haven't talked about this in a long, long time. I'm looking forward to going over next year. I shouldn't say looking forward to it, but I will be going to the anniversary over there for the 20th year. Prairie got a Tanya be able to come with me and meet me because she moved out to Georgia. And it's been rough for my friend Tanya. She mentally she had a little tougher. And then later on in my life, I was diagnosed with cancer about 2017, 18. If y'all see that commercial, if you were in the World Trade Center at that time, call up because that had a lot to do with people causing getting cancer. So I did. I'm under their health certification now. So it's been rough, but hey, we here. We're going through something else now with this pandemic. But to you young people, if I could tell you anything, let the petty stuff go. Love and respect your family because you never know. Thank you, my brother. Thanks for having me, Trisha. Are we going to take questions or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Trisha?
If I could just get a couple kids to jump on, I'm gonna pick on one of the kids I know. Kenya, are you there? I'm picking on you because I know you, Kenya and Nayeli. Does anyone else? Do you guys have any questions and or comments? It's always chilling for me to hear these stories because like I was alive, but I wasn't there. So to actually hear like the first person account is powerful for me, and I just want to honestly just say thank you for being brave enough to open up and be candid with our kids, our students, because like they were very young, if even born. I don't even know if they were born, so they don't know and or understand or have that real life connection. So thank you for taking the time to speak with them. Is there anyone in here who has a question for Mr. Cathcourt before we let him go, or a comment? Guys, they love to be silent.
Oh yeah, trust me, I didn't understand.
I have a question.
All right, we got one. Somebody jumped on.
I have a question. When do you think that when they jumped, they just instantly like they wanted to like have their families know that it was them? That like, because some people like they don't want to like get burned or anything, so they just jump off, and so that their families can identify them.
Well, that good question, and that's my thought. And I've heard a lot of experts say the same thing. And it's good that they. I'm not going to say it's good they did that, but as you know, or you may not know, it took years for a lot of families to identify their members. And to this day, there are a lot of family members who have not been able to identify their loved ones. But the ones that jumped, at least you were able to identify them and give them a, a burial, and all like that. But the ones that were, burnt, a lot of them were not be able to be identified. So yes, I truly believe when they made that decision to jump, that's what was in their thoughts. Very good question, young man.
I have a question.
Yes.
How did you actually feel? How did you actually feel when everything was going not to go in the elevator, but you actually went?
Well, it was a dumb move, to be honest with you, because a lot of people were stuck in the elevators in the World Trade Center. So if let's say that plane hit the building I was in instead of the World Trade Center, I could have been the one that been stuck in there. That's why they tell you when emergency, take the stairs, do not take the elevator. So it was a stupid move on my part, but my goal was to try to get the hell out of there as soon as possible. Even though I didn't know what was going on, I just know they said leave, and but I should have took the steps. Good question.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you like hear the plane like crash into the building?
No. Like I said, the first plane I didn't hear. The second plane, I heard the actual whoever's the pilot that I heard him or her, but it was end up being a him for what they said. Actually, you know how these cars now that you hear out in the street got all that muffling noise. Just imagine that 10 times, and somebody just pressing on the gas and pressing on it and pressing on it. That's what I heard. But being in the building, I never actually saw the actual plane hit the building. I was able to see the shadow of the plane and the noise of the plane. But I'd never heard the, well, I can't say I didn't hear because you heard a big explosion, but I can't actually say I seen it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did like the city or whoever make you take any therapy classes to like learn how to cope with what happened?
Well, not the city, but my job did. My job did. We was out of work for like 2 to 3 months, and we had to go to therapy. It was mandatory. Even if you didn't want to go,